Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. The first thing Claire Bennett heard from her husband's phone was not hello. It was his sister's sharp whisper cutting through the roar of the morning train. "Ethan, do not let your wife come home early today. Mom already gave your mistress the master bedroom." Claire stood between a man reading the financial pages and a college student with headphones, one hand wrapped around the metal pole, the other holding the wrong phone. For 3 seconds, the crowded train disappeared. The windows became black mirrors. Her own reflection stared back at her, pale but perfectly still, dressed in a charcoal coat, chestnut hair pinned low, eyes calm enough to frighten anyone who knew how fast her mind had started moving. The phone in her hand was Ethan's. She had grabbed it by accident 20 minutes earlier, when both black phones had been lying beside the coffee machine, and Ethan had rushed her with that familiar, impatient voice. "Claire, you will miss your train. Stop checking the stove like an old woman." He had kissed the side of her head without warmth, picked up her phone, and left for the parking garage. She had not noticed the swap until the train doors closed, and the screen lit up with a call from Rebecca Hale. Rebecca was not only Ethan's sister. She was the woman who smiled across family dinners while asking Claire when she planned to contribute properly to the Bennett household, as if Claire had not paid the down payment on the house under another company's name. She was the woman who borrowed Claire's designer bag and returned it with lipstick inside, then said rich girls should not be petty. She was the woman who called Claire plain because Claire did not dress like she was auditioning for approval. Claire should have let the call ring. Instead, she answered. Now Rebecca's words hung in the air like a dropped knife. Claire did not speak. Rebecca, believing she was talking to Ethan, continued in a rushed whisper. "Are you listening? Mom is decorating the nursery already. She says Lila deserves to feel like the real daughter-in-law before the baby comes. Your wife cannot see it today. She will ruin everything with that frozen face of hers." The train lurched. Claire's fingers tightened around the pole. Lila. The name was not unknown to her. Lila Hart was Ethan's new assistant at Bennett Development Group, a blonde woman with soft curls, glossy lips, and the kind of helpless laugh men mistook for innocence. Ethan had hired her 6 months earlier and described her as young but hard-working. Rebecca had called her sweet. Ethan's mother, Patricia Bennett, had once said at dinner that Lila had real warmth, unlike some women who bring office energy into a home. Claire had smiled then and passed the salad. She had not known Patricia was preparing to give the woman her bedroom. Rebecca sighed into the phone. "Ethan, say something. Did you tell the lawyer to prepare the transfer papers? Mom says the house must be out of Claire's reach before the divorce. Lila is scared Claire will take it." Claire looked at the phone screen. The train plunged into a tunnel. Her reflection sharpened against the dark glass. No tears. No shaking. Only the quiet arrival of a truth that had already been walking toward her for months. Rebecca kept talking. "And please remind Lila not to post anything until after tonight. She is too excited. I know she wants people to know she is carrying the Bennett heir, but we need Claire to sign first. Once she signs, it is over." There it was. A mistress. A baby. A house. A lawyer. A signature. All before breakfast. Claire pressed the phone closer to her ear and softened her voice just enough to sound like poor reception. "What time tonight?" Rebecca snapped, finally. "Are you brain dead today?" 7. Mom invited everyone for the family announcement. "Claire thinks it is your father's memorial dinner, right?" Claire's gaze lowered to the paper bag hanging from her wrist. Inside was a bottle of wine Ethan had asked her to buy for his father's memorial dinner. His father, Henry Bennett, had died 3 years ago. Claire had loved him more than anyone else in Ethan's family, because Henry had been the only one who treated her silence as dignity, not weakness. He used to call her the calm one, and tell Ethan that a man who married a woman like Claire should spend his life becoming worthy of her. Henry would have hated what they were doing with his name. Claire swallowed once. "Yes." Rebecca exhaled. "Good. Bring the papers in your briefcase. The prenuptial waiver, the house transfer, and the divorce settlement. Mom says Claire is too proud to read every line if you act heartbroken. She will sign just to look graceful." For the first time, Claire almost smiled. They thought grace meant blindness. "And Ethan," Rebecca added, her voice dropping, "do not feel guilty. Claire never gave this family a child. Lila did. That matters. Mom says a wife who cannot produce an heir should at least leave quietly." The train doors opened at the next station. A flood of commuters pushed in. Someone bumped Claire's shoulder and apologized. She barely heard them. Her left hand moved instinctively to her stomach, then stopped. No one in the Bennett family knew about the appointment scheduled for Friday. No one knew the doctor had called 2 days ago with blood results and said, "Mrs. Bennett, congratulations." No one knew Claire had been trying to decide whether to tell Ethan at dinner tonight, whether a child might restore something between them before she admitted the marriage had become a room without windows. Now she knew better. Rebecca's voice snapped again. "Anyway, call me when you get this. And make sure Claire's phone stays with you until she signs. Lila says Claire has contacts. She might ask someone to check the documents." Claire looked at the phone in her hand. Ethan had her phone. He thought he had cut off her contacts. By accident, he had handed her his entire plan. Claire lowered her voice. "I understand." Rebecca paused. "Ethan?" Claire ended the call. For a moment, she stood motionless among strangers, surrounded by coats, perfume, coffee breath, and the metallic scream of the tracks. Then she opened Ethan's messages. She did not search like an angry wife. She searched like the chief financial architect of the private trust that secretly held the Bennett family's lifeline. Chapter 2. Ethan Bennett had spent 8 years believing he had married a woman slightly above his station, but safely below his control. That was his first mistake. Claire was the only daughter of Marianne Ashford, founder of Ashford North Capital, a private investment office so discreet that most men like Ethan did not recognize its name until after its money had already saved them. Claire had grown up among boardrooms, estate lawyers, and men who smiled with expensive teeth while trying to steal from widows. Her mother had taught her early that wealth should move quietly if it wanted to survive. "Never announce the size of the blade," Marianne once told her. "Let them discover it when they lean too close." Claire had taken the lesson seriously. When she married Ethan, Bennett Development Group was drowning. His father Henry had built the company with pride, but bad loans and reckless expansion nearly broke it. Ethan was handsome, ambitious, and terrified of failure. Claire loved him then. She loved his hunger, his charm, the way his confidence faltered only with her. So she helped, not by handing Ethan cash. That would have wounded his pride and inflated his ego in the same breath. Instead, she arranged for an investment vehicle called Northline Holdings to purchase distressed Bennett debt, restructure it, and provide project financing under strict covenants. Ethan believed Northline was a patient outside investor. Patricia believed God had finally rewarded the Bennett name. Rebecca believed her brother's talent had saved them. Only Henry knew. Before his death, he had taken Claire's hands in his hospital room and whispered, "If my son ever forgets who kept the roof above him, do not remind him gently." Claire had cried then. Now, on the train, she opened Ethan's email and found exactly what Rebecca had promised. Draft divorce settlement, marital residence transfer, spousal waiver, non-disclosure agreement. The documents had been prepared by a small law firm she did not recognize. That alone told her Ethan knew their family attorney would never touch them. The settlement offered Claire a lump sum that looked generous to someone who thought the Bennett house belonged to Ethan. It did not. The title sat inside a holding company controlled by Northline, not because Claire wanted to trap Ethan, but because Northline had rescued the property from foreclosure during the restructuring. Ethan had never read the full closing file. He had signed where his lawyer told him to sign and boasted afterward that he had kept the family home. Claire opened the attachment labeled Personal Schedule. 7 p.m. Family Memorial Dinner. 7:30. Announce Lila's pregnancy. 7:40. Ask Claire to accept divorce privately. 8. Present revised settlement. 8:15. Have Patricia mention infertility. 8:20. Lila enters. 8:30. Claire signs. Claire stared at the schedule. It was not betrayal born from passion. It was choreography. She scrolled down. Notes from Ethan. Keep Claire emotionally contained. Do not let her call Marianne. If she refuses, remind her Northline financing depends on family stability. If she threatens legal review, say delay will hurt Henry's legacy. Claire's eyes narrowed. He planned to use Henry's name, her mother's distance, and his mistress's pregnancy to corner her into signing away dignity and assets he did not own. The train rose from the tunnel into morning light. Claire saved every file to a secure cloud account under her own name. Then she opened Ethan's photo gallery. Lila in Claire's kitchen wearing Claire's apron. Lila lying in the master bed with one hand over her stomach. Patricia kissing Lila's forehead in the breakfast nook. Rebecca holding up baby clothes in the living room. Ethan standing beside Lila in the nursery, one hand on her waist, smiling at the painted wall. The nursery. They had turned Claire's study into a nursery. Her study, where Henry's old project maps were framed on the wall, where Claire kept the first architectural model she helped Ethan present to Northline's committee, where she had spent nights fixing cash flow projections Ethan claimed as his own. For 1 second, anger rose so sharply that she could taste metal. Then her phone buzzed in Ethan's pocket somewhere across the city, and Ethan's phone buzzed in her hand. A message appeared from Lila. Did she suspect anything this morning? I hate hiding in her house like some dirty secret. Your mom says after tonight I can finally sleep in our room. Claire read it twice. Our room. Another message came. Also, baby kicked when I smelled your shirt. I think he knows daddy. Claire's stomach tightened. If Lila was truly pregnant, the child was innocent. That truth made the betrayal uglier, not softer. Adults had turned an unborn baby into a weapon before the child had even opened his eyes. Claire took a screenshot, saved it, and locked the phone. At the next station, she stepped off the train. She did not go to her office. She walked into a quiet hotel lobby, borrowed a private business booth under the name Claire Ashford, and made 3 calls. The first was to her attorney. I need an emergency review of documents drafted for me without disclosure, she said. Also prepare a marital injunction, preservation notice, and a title packet for the Bennett residence. The second was to Northline's general counsel. Freeze all discretionary Bennett development releases pending covenant review. Do not notify Ethan until noon. The third was to her mother. Marianne Ashford answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, elegant, and dangerous. Claire? Claire looked through the glass booth at commuters crossing the lobby, each carrying an ordinary morning. Mother, she said, Ethan is bringing his pregnant mistress to dinner tonight and asking me to sign away the house. There was a silence. Then Marianne said, What color are you wearing? Claire blinked. What? Tonight, Marianne said. What color are you wearing? Claire looked down at her charcoal coat. Black. Good. It photographs well. For the first time that morning, Claire let herself breathe. Chapter 3. Ethan did not realize the phones had been switched until 9:12 a.m. By then, Claire was sitting in the hotel business booth with his secrets copied, his financing frozen, and his attorneys about to receive notices that would make their hands sweat. His first message came through on his phone, which Claire still held. You took my phone. Claire did not respond. Then he called. She watched the screen light up, waited 3 rings, and answered. Good morning, Ethan. His voice was low and tense. Where are you? In the city. Give me my phone. Of course. You have mine. A pause. Did you answer any calls? Claire looked at the saved audio file Rebecca had unknowingly gifted her. Your sister called. Another pause. This one had weight. What did she say? Ethan asked. Claire kept her voice mild. She seemed anxious about dinner. Claire. Yes. Do not play this game. She glanced at the glass wall, where her reflection looked composed enough to be mistaken for mercy. I learned from the schedule that games are for 7 p.m. Ethan inhaled sharply. Listen to me. Whatever Rebecca said, she exaggerates. She was very specific. Because she is dramatic. You know her. I do. He lowered his voice, probably stepping into his office and closing the door. Claire could picture him perfectly. One hand on the desk, shoulders tight, his handsome face turning cold as charm failed. This is not how I wanted you to find out, he said. That you have a mistress? That our marriage has been over for a long time. Claire gave a soft laugh. It held no humor. Interesting. Mine felt active enough when you asked me to host investors last month. Public appearances are complicated. So are secret nurseries. Silence. There it was. The moment he understood how much she had seen. You went through my phone, he said. You brought my phone to your office, so I could not call anyone before signing legal documents you prepared in secret. That is not what happened. Then explain it tonight. Slowly. Ethan's voice hardened. You are angry. I understand that. But if you make this ugly, you will hurt more than me. Lila is pregnant. So Rebecca said. She is carrying my son. Claire looked at the ceiling and closed her eyes for one breath. My son. Not a child. Not a baby. A banner. Then you should behave like a father, she said. I am trying to. That is why we need a clean arrangement. Lila needs stability. In my bedroom? Claire, the house is a Bennett property. She opened her eyes. Is it? Another pause. Do not start with technicalities, Ethan said. Titles are not technicalities. My father built that house. Your father nearly lost it. Northline saved it. Northline invested because of me. Claire almost admired the audacity. Did it? His voice turned sharp. You sat at home for years while I rebuilt this family. Do not lecture me about the company. There was the old weapon. The one Patricia had polished and Ethan had learned to throw without looking. Claire at home. Claire quiet. Claire graceful. Claire conveniently erased from the rooms where her work had saved them. She looked at the time. 9:25 a.m. Ethan, she said, I will attend dinner tonight. His breath eased slightly. Good. Do not change anything. What? The guests. The schedule. The papers. Lila. Your mother. Rebecca. Bring everyone exactly as planned. He did not speak. Claire continued. If you cancel, I will assume you have chosen a legal route before a family conversation. That would be wise but less honest. Are you threatening me? No. I am giving you a chance to perform the truth in the room you prepared. His voice dropped. You will regret humiliating me. Claire looked at the phone in her hand, at the glowing evidence of his arrogance. Ethan, she said gently, you planned my humiliation down to the minute. She ended the call. The business booth felt suddenly too small. Claire gathered her files, stood, and smoothed her coat. Outside, the city kept moving. No one knew a marriage had just shifted from tragedy to evidence. At noon, Ethan learned Northline had frozen the next release. At 12:03, he called Claire 14 times. She did not answer once. Chapter 4. Patricia Bennett had always believed family was a stage, and she was born holding the script. By 6 that evening, she had transformed the Bennett house into a performance of tasteful mourning. White roses sat beneath Henry's portrait. Silver candlesticks lined the dining room. The good china, which Patricia had once said Claire was too stiff to appreciate, gleamed beneath the chandelier. In Claire's study, the door stood half open. Inside, pale blue curtains had replaced the linen ones Claire had chosen. A white crib stood where her reading chair used to be. Baby clothes hung in the wardrobe. A framed print of a sailboat covered Henry's old project map. Lila Hart stood in the middle of the room with both hands over her stomach, admiring the crib as if she had inherited a kingdom. It feels like a dream, she whispered. Patricia stood beside her, elegant in navy silk, pearls at her throat, silver hair swept into a perfect twist. You deserve this. A woman who gives a family its future deserves a proper place in it. Rebecca sat on the windowsill, scrolling through her phone. Just do not cry too much tonight. Claire loves looking morally superior. Lila turned, worry softening her pretty face. She was 27, blonde, blue-eyed, with a delicate build and the practiced fragility of a woman who had discovered helplessness could be persuasive. What if she refuses to sign? Lila asked. Patricia's mouth tightened. She will not. Claire is proud. Proud women hate scenes more than they hate losing. Rebecca laughed. And Ethan will do the sad husband routine. He is good at that. Lila looked down. I do feel bad. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Do not start. Claire had years to give him a baby. Rebecca, Patricia warned, not because she disagreed, but because cruelty was supposed to be delivered elegantly. Lila rubbed her stomach. Ethan says she might be cold about the baby. Patricia touched Lila's shoulder. That is why we will all be here. She cannot attack you in front of Henry's portrait. In the doorway, Ethan stood listening. He had changed into a dark suit and looked exactly like a man preparing for a funeral, though not necessarily someone else's. Since noon, his calls to Claire had gone unanswered. Northline had frozen funding without explanation. His CFO had asked whether there was a covenant problem. His attorney had called twice, voice tight, asking why he had not disclosed that the marital residence had layered ownership. Ethan hated uncertainty. He hated that Claire had created it without raising her voice. She knows more than expected, he said. Patricia turned. How much more? Enough. Rebecca lowered her phone. Because of the call? Ethan's eyes cut to her. What exactly did you say? Rebecca flushed. I thought I was talking to you. That was not my question. I told you not to let her come early. I mentioned the room. Maybe the papers. Ethan stared at her. Maybe Lila, Rebecca added. Patricia closed her eyes, then opened them with visible effort. Fine. Then we adjust. We make it emotional. Henry's memory, the baby, the family name. Claire may know facts, but she still cares about appearances. Ethan looked toward the nursery. For the first time, the room felt less like victory and more like evidence. Lila walked to him and touched his sleeve. Are we going to be okay? Ethan looked at her hand. She had painted her nails pale pink. Claire never wore pink. Claire wore wine red, deep gray, ivory. Colors that did not ask permission. Yes, he said. Lila smiled with relief. He wanted to believe himself. At 6:55, headlights swept across the front windows. Rebecca jumped up. She's here. Patricia looked around the nursery one last time. Everyone remember. Calm. Sympathetic. Firm. Ethan walked to the foyer before anyone else could. The front door opened before he reached it. Claire stepped inside using her own key. She wore a black tailored dress beneath a long wool coat. Her hair fell in smooth waves around her shoulders. Her makeup was quiet, her pearl earrings small, her expression unreadable. In one hand, she carried the bottle of wine Ethan had requested. In the other, a slim leather folder. Behind her came Marianne Ashford. Patricia's face changed. Marianne was 62, tall, silver blonde, and dressed in a cream coat that made everyone else's clothes look accidental. She had the kind of beauty that did not ask to be liked because it had long ago learned the value of being feared. She entered the Bennett house as if she owned the air inside it. Behind Marianne came a woman Ethan recognized too late as Victoria Lane, one of the city's most expensive family attorneys. And behind Victoria came a quiet man with a document case, Northline's general counsel, Daniel Mercer. Ethan stopped at the foot of the stairs. Claire looked at him. You invited family, she said. So did I. Chapter 5. The dining room froze around them. Patricia stood beside Henry's portrait, one hand resting on the back of a chair. Rebecca hovered near the sideboard. Lila appeared in the hallway behind Ethan, her blue dress fitted over her stomach, her face draining as she saw the guests behind Claire. For 1 second, no one spoke. Then Patricia forced a smile, so tight it looked painful. Marianne, she said. What a surprise. Marianne removed her gloves finger by finger. Patricia. I wish I could say the same. Rebecca muttered. This is supposed to be a private family dinner. Claire placed the wine on the table. It still is. Ethan stepped close, lowering his voice. Claire, this is unnecessary. She looked at him calmly. The nursery was necessary? His jaw tightened. Lila's hand went to her stomach. Rebecca moved beside her like a guard dog in silk. Patricia lifted her chin. Claire, tonight was meant to honor Henry. If you are angry with Ethan, that should be handled privately. Claire looked at Henry's portrait. The painted eyes were kind, tired, almost amused. She wondered what he would have said if he could see the table set beneath him, his memory being used as rope. I agree, Claire said. Henry deserves honesty. Patricia's smile faded. Marianne sat without waiting to be offered a chair. Victoria Lane sat beside her and opened a legal pad. Daniel Mercer remained standing near the doorway, quiet and precise. Ethan looked from one to another. Are we having dinner or a deposition? Claire removed her coat and draped it over a chair. That depends on how truthful everyone is. Rebecca laughed. Oh, please. You heard one phone call and decided to arrive like a courtroom drama. Claire turned to her. Your phone call was very informative. Rebecca flushed. Lila spoke softly. Claire, I know this is painful. Claire looked at her. Lila's eyes were wet. She looked fragile, almost sincere, and perhaps a little frightened. Her hands curved protectively over her stomach, inviting the room to see her not as a mistress, but as a mother. Do you? Claire asked. Lila swallowed. Ethan and I did not mean to hurt you. Marianne's mouth curved faintly, not quite a smile. Claire said, You moved into my bedroom. Lila's cheeks reddened. Patricia said the room would soon be ours. And that made it less wrong. Lila looked down. Patricia stepped forward. Enough. Lila is pregnant. She should not be interrogated. Then perhaps she should not have been placed inside my house as an argument. Ethan's voice sharpened. Claire. She turned to him. Yes. The room waited. Ethan inhaled, then rearranged his face into sorrow. Claire recognized the performance at once. He had used it after missing anniversaries, after lying about late meetings, after making her apologize for discovering his anger. I am sorry you found out this way, he said. I wanted to handle this with compassion. Claire said nothing. He continued, gaining confidence from the silence. Our marriage has been empty for a long time. We both know it. I have made mistakes, but Lila and I are having a child. I have responsibilities now. Rebecca nodded as if he were brave. Patricia placed a hand over her heart. Ethan reached for the briefcase on the sideboard. I prepared a settlement that protects you and allows everyone to move forward without ugliness. Victoria Lane looked up. Who prepared it? Ethan glanced at her. My counsel. Name? Marlowe and Finch. Victoria wrote it down. Interesting choice. Ethan ignored her and took out the documents. He placed them on the dining table before Claire. I am offering you more than fair, he said. A cash settlement, personal belongings, and discretion. In exchange, you waive claims to Bennett family property and agree not to interfere with company financing. Claire looked at the papers but did not touch them. Patricia spoke in a softer voice. Claire, you have always been dignified. Do not ruin that now. A child is coming. A real Bennett heir. Henry would want peace. Something shifted in Claire's eyes. Not anger. Something colder. Do not use Henry to sell me my own silence, she said. Patricia's face hardened. You are not being reasonable. Rebecca snapped, because she cannot stand that Lila gave Ethan what she never could. The room went still. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Marianne's gaze moved to Rebecca with such quiet contempt that Rebecca looked away despite herself. Claire reached into her leather folder and removed one medical envelope. She placed it on the table. Be careful, she said. Rebecca looked confused. What is that? Claire did not answer her. She looked at Ethan. His face changed before anyone else understood. Claire, he said quietly. Yes, she said. I was going to tell you tonight. Lila's hand slid from her stomach. Patricia stared at the envelope. Claire's voice remained steady. I am pregnant. For once, Rebecca had no words. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. The sorrow performance vanished. In its place came shock, calculation, and something almost like panic. Patricia gripped the back of the chair. How far? Ethan asked. Claire looked at him. Far enough to know that your family planned to humiliate the mother of your child under your father's portrait. The sentence landed like a chandelier falling. Lila stepped back, face white. Rebecca whispered, that could be fake. Marianne turned her head slowly. Rebecca, you should stop speaking while you still own a little dignity. Patricia found her voice. Claire, if this is true, then we can discuss arrangements. Claire looked at her with quiet disbelief. Arrangements? Patricia recovered quickly, reaching for warmth. You must understand. This changes things. No, Claire said. It reveals them. Ethan moved toward her. Claire, I did not know. She stepped back before he could touch her. That is because you were busy drafting a schedule for my humiliation. Victoria Lane slid a printed copy across the table. The schedule is preserved, by the way. Ethan looked at the page. His own notes stared back at him. Patricia's face lost color. Rebecca whispered, Oh God. Claire looked around the table. Since everyone is here, let us continue. Chapter 6. Daniel Mercer had said nothing until then. That made his voice more effective when he finally spoke. For the record, I represent Northline Holdings. Ethan's head turned sharply. Daniel placed a folder on the table. At noon today, Northline initiated a covenant review of Bennett Development Group. All discretionary releases are suspended pending investigation into misrepresentations related to ownership, marital interests, and potential misuse of restricted project funds. Patricia stared at him. Why is Northline involved in a family dinner? Daniel adjusted his glasses. Because Mr. Bennett repeatedly represented that certain marital and family assets were available to support financing obligations. Based on documents reviewed today, those representations may be inaccurate. Ethan's voice dropped. Daniel, this is not necessary. It is necessary when a borrower attempts to transfer assets he does not own and pressure a spouse to sign waivers affecting collateral representations. Rebecca looked at Ethan. What does that mean? Marian answered before he could. It means your brother tried to steal a house from the woman who saved it. Patricia snapped. That is outrageous. Claire opened another folder and removed the title packet. The Bennett residence is not held personally by Ethan. It is controlled through a property entity tied to Northline's restructuring agreement. Ethan has occupancy rights under family use provisions. He does not have authority to transfer it to himself, to Lila, or to anyone else. Lila gripped the doorway. But Ethan said, she began. Claire looked at her, not unkindly. Ethan says many things. Patricia's face burned. Henry built this home. Henry nearly lost it, Marianne said. Her voice was calm, but the room bent toward it. Claire arranged the rescue. Quietly. Because your husband was ashamed and your son was desperate. You have been sitting in her mercy for years and calling it Bennett pride. Patricia looked as if she had been slapped. Ethan turned on Claire. You told your mother everything? Claire met his eyes. You brought your mistress into my study. I asked you a question, and I answered with context. His control cracked. You think money makes you righteous? Claire's voice softened. No. I think truth makes you angry. Rebecca stepped forward, pointing at Claire. You hid all this from us. You let us think Ethan saved the company. Yes, Claire said. Rebecca blinked. Claire continued, because I loved him. Because Henry asked me to protect the family. Because at the time, I believed kindness did not need applause. The room quieted. For the first time, Patricia looked uncertain. Ethan seized the opening. Claire, we can fix this. We will cancel the settlement. We can talk privately. The baby changes everything. Lila made a small sound. Ethan did not look at her. Claire did. Lila understood in that instant what Claire had understood on the train. Ethan's loyalty went wherever his advantage moved. Patricia also saw it, but she refused to accept it. This family can still be preserved, she said. The children deserve a united name. Children? Claire asked. Patricia lifted her chin. If both pregnancies are real, then the situation is delicate. Marianne laughed once. A short, elegant sound with no warmth. Patricia, only you could turn bigamy in spirit into a seating chart. Victoria Lane placed another document on the table. Mrs. Bennet will not be signing any settlement tonight. We are filing for legal separation, preservation of marital assets, and protective orders regarding the residence. Any attempt to remove her property or alter the home further will be treated accordingly. Rebecca glared. Protective orders? Against family? Claire looked toward the hallway. You turned my study into a nursery without asking me. Lila's face crumpled. I did not know the house was yours. You knew I lived here. The words were quiet, and that made them harder to dodge. Lila lowered her eyes. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Everyone calm down. Claire, please. We have years together. Do not let one horrible mistake destroy all of it. Claire stared at him. One horrible mistake. The mistress had a room. The settlement had a schedule. The family had rehearsed lines. The documents had signatures waiting. He had not made a mistake. He had built a machine and felt shocked when the woman placed inside it knew how gears worked. Ethan, she said, a mistake is taking the wrong phone. His face tightened. This, she continued, was architecture. Chapter 7. The dinner never happened. The roast cooled in the kitchen. The wine remained unopened. Henry's portrait watched as the Bennet family disassembled itself around the dining table. Victoria reviewed the false settlement line by line, not because Claire needed it explained, but because humiliation had been prepared for her and she intended to return every portion with interest. Clause 4, Victoria said, tapping the page. Mrs. Bennet waives all claims to improvements, appreciation, and equity value in the marital residence. Since Mr. Bennet does not hold clear title, this clause is deceptive. Daniel added, it may also conflict with Northline collateral terms. Victoria turned the page. Clause 7. Mrs. Bennet agrees not to contact lenders, investors, or business partners regarding personal matters. Overbroad. Designed to prevent disclosure of financial misrepresentation. Marianne looked at Ethan. Sloppy. Ethan ignored her, jaw tight. Clause 11, Victoria continued. Mrs. Bennet acknowledges the marriage has been emotionally dissolved for at least 2 years. Claire looked at Ethan. 2 years ago you renewed our vows in Lake Como. Rebecca's head snapped toward her brother. You did what? Ethan's face darkened. It was a private trip. Lila looked sick. Claire removed another photograph from her folder. It showed Ethan on a terrace above the lake, slipping a new band onto Claire's finger as sunset burned behind them. On the back, in Ethan's handwriting, were the words, another lifetime would still be too short. Claire placed it beside the settlement. You wrote that 18 months ago, she said. Lila turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. Ethan looked at the photo, and for one unguarded second, shame passed through his eyes. Then pride killed it. People try to save marriages before they accept the truth, he said. And some people use romantic trips as brand maintenance, Marianne said. Patricia snapped, Marianne enough. Marianne's gaze moved to her. I have not begun. Rebecca pushed away from the sideboard. This is insane. Everyone is acting like Claire is some saint. She hid money, hid ownership, hid power. Maybe Ethan lied because she made him feel small. Claire turned to Rebecca. Rebecca lifted her chin, encouraged by her own cruelty. Yes. There. I said it. You walk around like you are too refined to fight, but you have been controlling everything from the beginning. Maybe Ethan needed someone who made him feel like a man. The room fell quiet. Claire looked at her sister-in-law and felt a strange, distant pity. Rebecca had spent years mistaking dependence on Ethan's success for loyalty. If he fell, her borrowed status fell with him. A man who needs a woman to shrink so he can feel tall is not a man, Claire said. Rebecca flushed. Patricia stood straighter. Do not speak to my daughter that way. Then teach your daughter not to confuse cruelty with insight. Patricia's mouth opened, but Daniel's phone vibrated. He glanced at it, then looked at Ethan. Mr. Bennett, your CFO has acknowledged receipt of the covenant notice. He is requesting an emergency board call tomorrow morning. Ethan's face hardened. He had no authority to contact you directly. Daniel's tone remained neutral. The notice instructs him to preserve records and cooperate. This is my company. Marianne tilted her head. For now. Ethan turned on her. You have wanted this from the beginning, haven't you? To prove I was not good enough for your daughter. For the first time, Marianne's expression changed. Not anger. Disappointment, old and deep. Ethan, I loaned you credibility because Claire loved you. I accepted your pride because Henry asked me to give you room to grow. I watched my daughter soften her intelligence so you could feel brilliant at dinner. Do not flatter yourself by calling my patience a plot. Ethan said nothing. Patricia looked at Claire, then at Marianne, as if the room had shifted into a language she did not speak. Lila took one shaky step forward. What happens to me? No one answered immediately. Claire studied her. The younger woman had arrived expecting elevation. She had found herself standing in another woman's home, carrying another woman's husband's child, facing documents that revealed she had been both weapon and fool. You call your own attorney, Claire said. You get your own doctor. You do not sign anything Ethan gives you without review. Lila stared at her. Why would you tell me that? Because I know what it looks like when he says trust me. Ethan laughed bitterly. Now you are allies? Claire looked at him. No. We are evidence that you repeat methods. Lila began to cry then, quietly, without the pretty timing she had used earlier. Rebecca looked annoyed. Patricia looked embarrassed. Ethan looked trapped between women. He could no longer arrange into roles. Claire picked up her coat. Ethan moved toward her. Where are you going? To a hotel. This is your house. Yes, she said. And tonight it feels crowded with lies. He reached for her arm. Marianne's voice cut through the room. Do not touch my daughter. Ethan stopped. Claire looked at his hand, then at his face. Tomorrow, she said, my team will remove my personal belongings. The nursery will be dismantled. Anything missing will be documented. Patricia's face twisted. You would throw out a baby's room? Claire's eyes cooled. I am reclaiming my study. Lila's child deserves a room not built from theft. She walked out with Marianne, Victoria, and Daniel behind her. At the door, she paused beneath the porch light and looked back once. Ethan stood in the foyer, framed by the house he had tried to steal, surrounded by family members who had mistaken his lies for leadership. For years, Claire had feared that leaving him would make her life smaller. Now she saw the truth. She had been living inside a room he kept shrinking. Chapter 8. The next morning, Bennett Development Group held the most expensive panic meeting of Ethan's life. Claire attended by video from a conference room at Ashford North Capitol. She wore a pale blue blouse and a dark blazer. Her hair was pulled back. A glass of water sat beside her untouched. Around the Bennett board table, Ethan looked as though he had slept in his suit. Patricia had no formal role in the company, but Claire could see her shadow through the glass wall outside the room. Rebecca sat near the end pretending to take notes, though she had no reason to be there except entitlement. The CFO, Martin Graves, began with a dry throat and a shaking hand. Northline has suspended the Riverside quarter release and requested documentation on ownership representations, personal guarantees, and related party use of restricted assets. One board member, a retired banker named Louise Hartwell, looked at Ethan. Why? Ethan leaned forward. This is a personal matter being weaponized during a difficult separation. Claire did not speak. Daniel Mercer did. Northline's concerns are not personal. They involve documents submitted by Mr. Bennett's office claiming access to collateral and family assets that he does not control. There are also questions regarding whether restricted project funds supported personal residential alterations. Louise's eyes sharpened. Residential alterations? Daniel placed the nursery invoices on the screen. Paint, furniture, designer crib, custom wardrobe, installation, all paid through a vendor associated with Bennett Development's Riverside model units, then rerouted. Ethan's face drained. Claire had not known that part until Daniel found it overnight. The nursery had not only been installed in her study. It had been billed to a project account. Even Patricia looked shocked through the glass. Louise turned slowly toward Ethan. You used project funds to decorate a nursery in your marital residence? Ethan's voice roughened. The vendor made a coding error. Martin, the CFO, looked down. Louise noticed. Martin swallowed. The invoice was manually approved by Mr. Bennett's office. Rebecca whispered something under her breath. Ethan shot her a warning look. Claire remained silent. Silence, used correctly, forced other people to fill it with truth. Louise looked at the screen. Mrs. Bennett, what is your position? Claire sat straighter. As a representative of the ownership entity behind the Northline investment, I require 3 actions before any funds are released. First, independent review of the submitted representations. Second, removal of Ethan Bennett from sole approval authority over restricted funds. Third, preservation and review of any personal expenses processed through project vendors. Ethan slammed one hand on the table. You are trying to remove me from my own company. Claire finally looked at him. I am trying to prevent your company from collapsing under your personal choices. My father built this company. Your father protected workers, paid vendors on time, and read documents before signing them. Stop hiding behind his portrait. Louise's mouth tightened, but she did not disagree. Ethan's attorney joined from another screen and attempted to argue conflict of interest. Victoria Lane responded with dates, disclosures, and documents so clean that the attorney changed topics twice and then stopped trying. By the end of the call, Ethan had lost temporary sole authority over restricted project spending. Martin would co-sign all disbursements. An independent accounting firm would review vendor records. Northline's freeze would remain in place. And Claire, who had once poured coffee in that same boardroom while men praised Ethan's instincts, was formally added as observer for the covenant review. After the meeting, Ethan called her from his private line. This time she answered. Do you feel powerful now? He asked. Claire looked through the conference room window. Her mother stood outside speaking to Daniel, one hand resting lightly on a folder. The Ashford office was all glass, stone, and quiet purpose. No, Claire said. I feel awake. You are destroying Henry's company. You decorated a fraudulent nursery with project funds. It was a coding error. Then you should be grateful for the review. His laugh was ragged. You know, I used to think your calm was beautiful. Now I see it was arrogance. Claire looked down at her hands. The wedding ring remained on her finger, but she no longer felt it as a promise. It was a record like everything else. And I used to think your ambition was courage, she said. Now I see it was hunger with good lighting. He was quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. Claire, come home. We should talk without lawyers. There it was. The old door. The one he opened whenever consequences grew sharp. No, she said. I am still your husband. For now. And the father of your child. The words entered the room and changed its temperature. Claire placed a hand over her stomach. For a moment, she felt the weight of the life she had not planned to protect alone. That is why I hope you become better than this, she said. But I will not gamble my child's safety on the version of you I used to defend. She ended the call before his answer could become another wound. Chapter 9. Lila called Claire 3 days later from a clinic parking lot. Her voice sounded small. I did what you said. Claire was in her hotel suite reviewing property inventories while 2 movers packed the last of her books from the Bennett house. She paused with a pen in her hand. You saw your own doctor? Yes. Are you safe? Lila exhaled shakily. I am pregnant. 15 weeks. The baby is Ethan's. The doctor said everything looks normal. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. Relief came first, then sadness. Relief that Ethan had not invented a child. Sadness that the child had been pulled into a war before birth. Good, Claire said. Then keep your appointments private. Ethan wants copies. Give them to your attorney. Lila was quiet. Then she said, Patricia asked me to move into her guest house. Will you? I do not know. She says the baby should be close to family. Claire heard the fear beneath the sentence. Patricia's warmth came with locks. Claire had learned that slowly. Lila was learning it fast. Do you have your own money? Claire asked. Some. Enough for 2 months? Maybe. Claire did not offer money. Not directly. That would twist the situation into a debt neither woman needed. Ask your attorney about temporary support. Ethan has obligations. Make them legal. Lila gave a broken little laugh. You are very calm about telling your husband's pregnant mistress to seek support. I am calm about children eating. The line went silent. Then Lila whispered, I am sorry. Claire looked at the inventory sheet. Her study chair was scratched. Her model of Riverside Quarter had been moved to the garage and cracked at one corner. Her favorite lamp was missing. What are you sorry for? She asked. All of it. That is too broad to mean anything. Lila inhaled. I am sorry I called you cold. I am sorry I slept in your bed. I am sorry I let them talk about you like you were already gone. I am sorry I liked it when Patricia said I was the real daughter-in-law. The honesty was ugly enough to be useful. Claire leaned back. Thank you. Do you forgive me? Claire looked toward the window, where late afternoon light touched the city roofs. No, she said. Lila made a small sound. Claire continued, but I hope you become someone your child can trust. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Lila said, I hope you do too. The words might have sounded insulting from someone else. From Lila, they sounded like a clumsy blessing. Claire ended the call and returned to the inventory. That evening, Ethan arrived at the hotel unannounced. Security called first. Mrs. Bennett, your husband is in the lobby. He says it is urgent. Claire almost said no. Then she looked at Victoria's latest message confirming the separation filing would be served in the morning. There were conversations that had to occur before papers made them impossible. Send him to the lounge, she said. Not upstairs. Ethan was waiting near the window when she arrived. He wore a black coat and no tie. Without the house, the office, or his family surrounding him, he looked like a man stripped of scenery. He stood. Thank you for seeing me. Claire sat across from him. You have 10 minutes. Pain crossed his face. Is that what we are now? Efficient. He looked down, almost smiling despite himself. You always did know where to place a knife. Ethan. He nodded, swallowing whatever speech he had prepared. I made a mess. Claire waited. More than a mess, he corrected. I know. She studied him carefully. His remorse might be real. It might also be fear wearing a clean shirt. What do you want? She asked. A chance to fix what I can. The company? Everything. Be specific. He looked at her stomach, then away. I want to be involved with our child. The words entered her softly and hurt anyway. You will have a legal path to request that, she said. Legal path, he repeated. Claire, I am the father. Yes. And I am the mother you plan to trap, humiliate, and dispossess. Legal paths exist for a reason. His eyes reddened. I did not know you were pregnant. That does not make what you did better. It changes how I feel. That is not the same. He looked toward the lobby, jaw tight. My mother keeps saying we can still make a family arrangement. Your mother thinks people are furniture. A brief, unwilling laugh left him. Then it faded. She hates that you were the money. I was never the money. I was your wife. The sentence seemed to strike harder than accusation. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. I envied you. I think that is where it started. Your calm. Your family. The way you never seemed impressed by rooms that made me nervous. I wanted to deserve you. Then I wanted to prove I did not need you. Then I wanted someone who looked at me like I was already enough. Claire listened. It was the closest thing to truth he had given her in months. Lila looked at you that way, she said. Yes. Because you lied to her too. He closed his eyes. Yes. For a heartbeat, Claire saw him as he had been when she first loved him. Not innocent, but frightened. Not cruel yet, only weak in a way she mistook for tenderness. Then she remembered the schedule. 8:15. Have Patricia mention infertility. She stood. Ethan looked up. Claire, your 10 minutes are over. He rose too. Is there any version of this where you do not hate me? She considered the question. I do not hate you, she said. Hate would keep you too close. His face changed, grief rising through the exhaustion. She walked away before pity could talk her into another year of repair work. Chapter 10. The legal separation became public because Patricia made it public. She called an old society columnist and framed the story as tragedy. Beloved developer Ethan Bennett, trapped between a cold heiress wife and a vulnerable expectant mother. Family home under attack by outside money. Legacy at risk. The article appeared online at 9 in the morning. By 10, Marian had read it. By 11, Ashford North's communications team released a statement, so restrained it felt surgical. Northline Holdings confirms that its covenant review of Bennett Development Group concerns documented financial representations, restricted fund usage, and governance matters. Personal attacks against Mrs. Claire Bennett do not alter the record. At noon, Victoria filed an exhibit in court containing Ethan's schedule, the false settlement documents, and evidence of the nursery invoices. By afternoon, the story had changed. Not cold wife. Defrauded spouse. Not family home under attack. House secretly rescued by wife's investment structure. Not vulnerable mistress alone. Pregnant assistant placed in wife's bedroom, while family prepared coercive legal papers. Patricia called Claire at 4. Claire answered because her attorney had advised documenting all contact. "You humiliated this family," Patricia said, voice shaking with rage. Claire sat in the hotel suite with a cup of tea cooling beside her. "You called the columnist. I defended my son. You exposed him. Do not twist this. You could have handled matters privately." Claire looked at the city beyond the window. Rain blurred the glass, turning towers into gray shadows. "You prepared a public replacement for me in my own home." Patricia was silent for one sharp second. "Lila is carrying Ethan's child. So am I. If you cared about your baby, you would not create scandal." Claire's hand stilled. For years, Patricia's insults had slipped under doors wearing perfume. This one came with mud on its shoes. "Patricia," Claire said, "do not mistake my restraint for continued access." "What does that mean?" "It means all future contact goes through counsel." "Claire, do not be dramatic." "Goodbye." She ended the call and blocked the number. Her hand trembled afterward, but only briefly. That night, she returned to the Bennett house with movers, an inventory specialist, and a security guard. Ethan was not there. Patricia had been advised not to interfere. Rebecca watched from her car across the street, furious and useless. Claire stood in the doorway of her former study. The crib had been dismantled. The blue curtains lay folded in a box. The sailboat print leaned against the wall. Beneath it, Henry's project map had been found in the storage room, slightly bent but intact. Claire lifted the map carefully and brushed dust from the frame. Riverside Quarter. Henry's last dream for the company. He had wanted mixed-income housing, public green space, and small business storefronts. Ethan had later tried to redesign it into luxury towers with a token affordable wing hidden near the service entrance. Claire had fought him quietly through financing terms, insisting Henry's original community commitments remain. Now the project was under review because Ethan had treated company funds like pocket money. Claire looked at the cracked architectural model on the table. She could let Northline walk away. It would be clean. Profitable, even. Ethan would lose, Patricia would lose, Rebecca would lose, and no one could accuse Claire of saving people who had tried to destroy her. But workers would lose too. Tenants waiting for housing. Small contractors. The neighborhood council Henry had promised. Claire touched the edge of the model. Revenge was easy when it burned only the guilty. Harder when the fire spread. The next morning, she called Louise Hartwell. "I want to discuss a rescue plan," Claire said. Louise paused. "For Bennett Development?" "For Riverside Quarter. The company can survive if governance changes." "And Ethan?" Claire looked at Henry's map, now leaning against her hotel wall. "Ethan cannot lead what he tried to corrupt." Chapter 11. The emergency shareholder meeting took place 2 weeks later in the Bennett Development Auditorium. Employees filled the back rows. Project managers whispered with architects. Contractors stood near the doors in work jackets, arms crossed, faces tense. The board sat on stage beneath the company logo. Ethan occupied the center chair, though everyone knew the chair was no longer secure. Patricia sat in the front row dressed in black, performing wounded dignity for anyone willing to watch. Rebecca sat beside her, pale and furious. Lila was absent. Her attorney had advised distance, and for once she had listened. Claire arrived with Marianne and Daniel. The room changed when she entered. Not because she was loud. She was not. She wore a white suit beneath a camel coat, her hair pinned back, her face composed. But power does not always need volume. Sometimes it looks like a woman holding the documents everyone else fears. Ethan watched her walk down the aisle. For a moment, she saw the old hunger in his face, mixed now with resentment and something close to pleading. He still wanted the room to believe he was its center. He had not realized the center had moved. Louise opened the meeting. "We are here to address the findings of the preliminary covenant and governance review." The findings were not kind. Restricted funds misused. Ownership representations inaccurate. Project vendor controls weak. Personal decisions interfering with financing stability. Ethan's attorney argued that removal would destabilize the company. Daniel argued that keeping Ethan would make financing impossible. Martin, the CFO, confirmed that employees and contractors were already at risk if funds remained frozen. Then Louise invited Claire to speak. Ethan's head turned slightly, as if bracing for attack. Claire walked to the podium. She looked first at the employees. "Many of you do not know me," she said. "Some of you know me only as Ethan Bennett's wife. A few may remember me from early Riverside planning meetings, though my name was not on most agendas." A murmur moved through the room. "I am speaking today as a representative of Northline Holdings, and as someone who made the original rescue financing possible when Bennett Development was close to losing its core properties." Patricia stiffened. Rebecca looked down. Ethan's face went flat. Claire continued, "I will not pretend the last weeks have been painless. But this company is more than one man's pride, one family's image, or one marriage's collapse. Henry Bennett built a business that employed people, honored contracts, and believed development should leave a city better than it found it." Several older employees nodded. "That legacy does not belong to anyone who uses it as a shield for misconduct. It belongs to the people willing to protect it with clean books and honest governance." She turned one page. "Northline is prepared to release conditional funding for Riverside Quarter under a revised structure. The conditions are clear. Ethan Bennett steps down as chief executive pending final review. Martin Graves becomes interim operating lead with board oversight. Louise Hartwell chairs a governance committee. Vendor controls are rebuilt. Personal expenses are repaid. Community commitments remain intact." The room erupted into whispers. Ethan stood. "You cannot do this." Claire looked at him. "Northline can decline to fund. The board can replace leadership. Employees can decide whether they want a future built on your ego or Henry's promises." His face reddened. "You are taking my father's company." "No," she said. "I am giving it a chance to survive you." Patricia rose from the front row. "How dare you stand there and speak of Henry?" Claire turned to her. "Because someone should." The room quieted. Patricia's pearls trembled against her throat. "You are not a Bennett." Claire placed both hands on the podium. "You reminded me of that for 8 years, she said. "But I protected this company more faithfully than the people who used the name as decoration." The employees heard it. The board heard it. Ethan heard it most of all. Louise called for a vote. It passed. Ethan Bennett was removed as chief executive pending final investigation. Martin Graves became interim operating lead. Northline's rescue plan was accepted. Patricia sat down as if her bones had softened. Rebecca began crying angry, silent tears. Ethan remained standing, staring at the board as if betrayal had a shape and wore every face in the room. When the meeting ended, he approached Claire near the side aisle. "Congratulations," he said. "You finally own everything." Claire looked at him. "I own my choices. You should try it. Do not act noble. You wanted revenge." "At first," she admitted. That surprised him. She continued, "Then I remembered your father. And the employees. And the project. Revenge would have been letting it burn." His anger faltered. "Claire," he said, quieter now, "what do I do?" The question was the same one he had asked her in different forms for years. "Fix this for me. Think for me. Make me better than I am." This time, she did not soften. "You tell the truth without using it to buy sympathy," she said. "You repay what you took. You become a father without turning children into leverage. And you stop asking women you hurt to manage the consequences." He looked at her stomach. "Will you tell the baby about me?" "I will tell the truth in age-appropriate pieces." Pain crossed his face. "That sounds cold." Claire shook her head. "No, that sounds safe." She walked past him into the lobby, where employees were already gathering around Martin, asking what came next. For the first time in years, Claire did not turn back to see whether Ethan was following. Chapter 12. 3 months later, Claire moved into a townhouse of her own. It was smaller than the Bennett house, but warmer. Sunlight entered the kitchen in the morning. The study had built-in shelves, a deep green reading chair, and Henry's project map on the wall, restored and reframed. There was a nursery too, but it was not built from theft or performance. It was painted soft cream, with a wooden crib near the window and a small mobile of brass stars turning slowly in the air. Claire assembled the bookshelf herself because the instructions were simple, and she wanted the satisfaction of tightening each screw. Marianne arrived halfway through with soup, fruit, and opinions. "That shelf is crooked," her mother said from the doorway. Claire glanced at it. "It has character. So does a sinking ship." Claire laughed, then pressed one hand to her stomach as the baby shifted. She was beginning to show now. Not enough for strangers to offer seats, but enough that her body no longer felt like a secret. Marianne softened. "Seat. I will fix it," You have never assembled furniture in your life. I have acquired companies. This cannot be more irritating. It was in fact more irritating. 10 minutes later, both women were sitting on the floor, surrounded by screws, laughing hard enough that Claire had to wipe her eyes. For a long time, laughter had felt disloyal to her pain. Now she understood it differently. Laughter was not denial. It was oxygen returning to rooms that grief had sealed. The separation proceedings continued, but the sharpest battles were over. Ethan had agreed to repay misused funds through asset liquidation. He had supervised contact with Lila regarding their child through attorneys. He had requested mediation for future custody arrangements with Claire's baby after birth, and Victoria had responded with conditions so detailed he could not turn sentiment into strategy. Patricia sent one letter. Claire did not open it. Rebecca sent none. Lila sent a birth announcement months later. A boy. Oliver Hart. She did not use Bennett as the surname. Claire looked at the tiny photograph attached to the email, a sleeping infant with one fist near his cheek, and felt no hatred at all. Only a quiet hope that the women around him would teach him better than the man who fathered him. Claire's own daughter was born on a cold November morning after 18 hours of labor, and one moment when Claire, exhausted and shaking, whispered, "I cannot do this." Marian held her hand and said, "You already are." When the baby finally cried, Claire cried too. She named her Nora Ash Bennett Ashford. Not to honor Ethan, to keep truth visible. Ethan met Nora 2 weeks later in a supervised family room with Victoria present. He looked nervous holding her, terrified by how small she was. Claire watched from a chair across the room, every instinct alert. To his credit, Ethan did not perform. He looked at his daughter and whispered, "Hello, Nora. I am sorry I met you late." Claire did not forgive him in that moment, but she allowed the sentence to exist. Life after betrayal did not become simple. There were court dates, feeding schedules, sleepless nights, awkward legal emails, and mornings when Claire woke furious at memories she thought she had finished. There were also quiet breakfasts, new project meetings, Nora's fingers wrapping around Claire's thumb, and the steady realization that peace did not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes peace arrived as a phone placed face down. Sometimes as a door locked from the inside. Sometimes as a woman learning that calm was not the same as silence. Chapter 13. 1 year after the train call, Claire stood in the completed public courtyard of Riverside Quarter. Children ran through the fountain mist. Small shops opened onto brick paths. Young trees lined the central walkway. Workers in clean shirts stood proudly beside their families. A brass plaque near the entrance read, "Henry Bennett Community Square restored through the Riverside Preservation Trust," and Northline Holdings. Claire stood at the edge of the crowd with Nora asleep against her shoulder, warm and heavy in a cream knit hat. Marianne stood beside her, elegant as ever, though her gaze softened every time she looked at the baby. Martin Graves gave a speech about accountability and renewal. Louise Hartwell spoke about governance. A city councilwoman thanked the project team for preserving affordable units. Ethan attended but did not speak. He stood near the back in a dark coat, thinner than before, watching the plaque with an expression Claire could not fully read. He had lost the company leadership, the house, his public image, and the illusion that charm could outrun records. But he had not lost every chance to become decent. Whether he used that chance was no longer Claire's work. After the ceremony, he approached carefully. "May I say hello?" he asked, looking at Nora. Claire shifted the sleeping baby slightly. Briefly, Ethan looked at his daughter. His face changed, as it always did around her. Less certain, more human. "Hello, sweetheart," he whispered. Nora slept on. He smiled sadly. "She has your calm." Claire looked at him. "She has her own." He nodded, accepting the correction. For a moment, they stood together beneath Henry's plaque, no longer husband and wife in any meaningful way, not enemies in the dramatic sense either. Just two people connected by consequences, one of whom had finally stopped asking the other to carry them. Ethan looked at the square. "My father would have liked this." "Yes," Claire said. "He would have. Thank you for saving it." Claire watched a little girl chase fountain spray across the bricks, laughing with her whole body. "I did not save it for you." "I know. That was progress too. Small, late, insufficient, but real enough to acknowledge and not enough to reward." Marianne approached with the stroller. Ethan stepped back. "Goodbye, Claire," he said. "Goodbye, Ethan." There was no ache in it this time. Only a clean closing. On the ride home, Claire sat in the back of the car while Nora slept beside her. The city moved past in gold and glass. Her phone rested in her bag, silent. She thought of that morning 1 year earlier. The wrong phone. The crowded train. Rebecca's first sentence, sharp and careless, pulling the curtain from an entire life. At the time, Claire had thought the call revealed her husband's betrayal. It had done more than that. It revealed the cost of shrinking herself to preserve someone else's pride. It revealed the danger of being graceful for people who used grace as a cage. It revealed that silence could protect peace, but it could also protect lies if a woman forgot she was allowed to speak. Claire looked at Nora's sleeping face. Her daughter would not inherit a perfect life. No child did. But she would inherit a mother who knew the difference between forgiveness and surrender, between family and ownership, between love and the performance of being chosen. When they reached home, Claire carried Nora upstairs to the nursery. The brass stars above the crib turned slowly in the dim light. Claire placed her daughter down and stood there for a while, one hand resting on the crib rail. The house was quiet, not lonely, not empty, quiet. This time, quiet belonged to her. Subscribe for more stories about betrayal, hidden power, and the moment a woman stops being silent.